Hey, this is for Hardship Booty Day 10. So we have two new exercises today. We do have also a session of foam rolling that we need to be a little bit intentional about. So foam rolling is awesome for multi-purpose or multi-times. So you could use it as a warm-up, as a cool-down recovery. And actually even in between your workouts, and then you could use it as a standalone recovery, stretching, tension relief session that you could use the foam rolling for as a prop for flexibility. Foam rolling is great all around, but the most important thing to remember about foam rolling is to know what your intention is and to position and roll in a way that supports that intention. So there is a small factor of adjusting and experimenting for your own body, but for the most part, we have to keep the focus on what the intention is. So for our purposes today, we're using it as a warm-up, but we're being intentional around the pre-glute workout. And so we'll be going around four areas: your glutes, your TFL, your quads, and your hamstrings. So the glutes and the TFL are going to be the most intentional, and they're smaller areas to work with, right? So we can't just willy-nilly like do these long momentum based foam rolls. So we are going to have a little bit of a setup. But again, this is one of those situations where once you kind of figure out the setup for yourself, it's almost a one and done deal, because once you figure out what works for you, you don't have to tinker with it too much thereafter. So the glute med is going to be a little bit different in the way we foam roll as far as the position of the foam rolling than the other three. But then the TFL is going to be the most tricky, because the TFL is a very, it's hard to pinpoint. So here's what we're going to do. We'll take, just like we did when we did the clamshell, where we used our hand as our tactile cue and feedback, we're going to hook that thumb right at the bony crest of your pelvis. Then we're going to just wrap your fingers kind of naturally where it rests, and where those four fingers rest will be your glutes med. Now, the TFL, you want to think about if you were to just slide this finger up and down, like in the front side of this bony area right here, that's where, or if you were to just bring your fingers around in line with your thumb, right here is where your TFL is. Okay, so there's a lot of bones to contend with. It's a very small area. We have to be very intentional about getting this area. So the foam rolling, the choices are, a lot of people tend to start with this type of foam roll, because this is what you'll see in a lot of gyms and yoga studios. This is what they might be used to. The nubby ones are my favorites. We'll go ahead and use what people are probably most used to. The difference would be in how you have to just kind of wrap or position your leg or foot stance, and to consider the length that you're working with. All right, so we'll do the glute med first, because that's what's a little bit different. So when we're talking about the muscle fibers of the glute med, where it's going in this diagonal direction, right? So in the case of the glute med, for our pre-workout foam rolling, we don't want to roll in the direction of those fibers. Instead, we want to go across, so it'll look rolling this way. So what we want to do for the glute med is actually end up sitting more lengthwise. Okay, now I'm going to give you a rule of thumb. The rule of thumb will be that whatever side is not working, that side you will bend the leg for support. So I'm going to work my right glute med, or glute max, glute med area right now. So I'm going to bend the left leg. I'm going to sit on top of this, so really more, and you could kind of angle it just slightly to, in fact, go against the muscle fibers more. Now, once you're kind of sitting on it, of course, you're supporting yourself with your hand. This non-working side bent for support. Usually the working side, you'll have more of a relaxed stance. Now, you're just going to do these small rolls. Remember, you really don't have a lot of room to maneuver here. You're just gonna roll from side to side and try to get to those meaty areas of the glutes. Now, if you find a sore spot, which is more like a knotty area, right? We're going to spend an extra 10 seconds just kind of staying right on there until you feel it sort of release. But in the case of going against the muscle fibers like we're doing right now, what you should feel more like is that you're doing a bit of a contraction of the glutes in order to do this movement. That's correct, that's what we want. Now, we're going to move on to the TFL. We could leave the foam roller basically in the same spot for all of these moves. What we want to do here is, again, use our bent leg for support, and this time get a little bit more right on, kind of towards the side. But now you want to bring this leg forward here for additional support, and you're going to just work, remember where we were talking about the TFL, just to work around there, but you also probably want to kind of turn over ever so slightly, just your upper torso, so you get a slight turn and get into that TFL area a little bit more, because it's more on the front hip. It's part of your hip flexor group. So just see what you could do. Reposition this leg if you need to. Okay, what you don't want to end up doing here is rolling too far down towards your knee and hit your IT band. Okay, you'll know when you do that. Okay, now for the quads, a couple different ways you could do this. You could start in that same starting position, okay? And then in order to get to the quads, go ahead and turn over. And so the non-working leg, still bent, could be just halfway straddling. And now you have a little bit more room, whether you want to come up onto your hands or whether you want to come up onto your hands or get on your elbows, okay? Now you have a little bit more room to use momentum, okay? And do it that way. Now, if you do one leg at a time, it's a little bit more intense. If you want to come down on both and just roll, okay? That's another way. Same thing when we're doing the hamstrings. So you could start off in the same sort of side position here. Now you want to bring this leg back around so that you could turn your body to focus more on your hamstrings, okay? And you could reposition the foam roller. Now you could also do this with both legs at a time and be up on your arms to roll out, okay? So everything we're doing, we could spend about 30 seconds to a minute on each side or on each move. And what we're learning to do here as well, a couple more things on the foam rolling. What we're learning to do here as well is to learn what is the difference if you feel a pain, whether it's your muscle, your joints, your tendons, or your bones, so that you know when to kind of shift and worry, or when it is a pain due to the tension that you really need to work through, okay? The other thing about the foam rolling is that one of the reasons why it works well as a warm-up is that even though we were working intentionally on certain muscle groups, overall just kind of having to support yourself with other parts of your body, it gives a little bit of your blood flowing and your muscles warmed up. So that's another reason why it also works well for warm up. All right, the very first exercise is the reverse lunge kickback. So both exercises today are combos. We're going to have basically 2 moves equal 1 rep. So the first one is the reverse lunge plus the kickback, and it looks like this. So we've done the reverse lunge in a couple of various ways, I think, so far. So we'll take that big step back. So I'm gonna work my front leg here. Right leg steps back. pretty far so that you're focusing the weight on the glutes. You're going to bring your knee down pretty far to the ground, come up, and as you do so, at the same time, extend that back leg and squeeze through the back glutes, okay? That would be 1 rep, and we would continue on, okay? Now, a couple things to note here. We want to keep our angle of our, so we have a little bit of a hip hinge, but our neutral spine. So we want to keep that angle of that hip hinge and the spine forward about 20-30 degrees and keep it there, because if we come up like this, then you'll also notice that your weight on the back leg will shift from the ball and toe of your foot to your heel coming down. So you want to watch that you don't do that. If you need to hang on to something, go ahead and do so. And whenever I say hang on to something, it's never meant to be a grip unless you absolutely need it. It's like 80% mental, 80-90% mental, and 10% actual physical. So just lightly tap your hands on something, and that will give your mental comfort, okay? So go ahead and do it that way. I'll show you on this side. And then of course the moderate level will be to use weights, okay? And then the step up level will be to then also use the band, okay, in between. So that will really kick it up. The exercise number 2 is your donkey kick hydrant. So it's the donkey kick up or the bent leg kick up to your fire hydrant. So this one we get on our tabletop position, and then I'll show you working my right side. So the donkey kick will be where we're going to take the whole of the flat of our foot, the bottom of our foot, and try to see if we could act as if we're going to stamp the ceiling with the bottom of our shoe or our foot, okay? Then after we come down, we want to bring that leg out to the side, and so this is a hip abduction exercise, and we want to basically let your glute med do the work, so you don't want to drop to the side here to cheat your way. You want to basically see if you could stay square in the hips, and through your tabletop position, engage everything and bring that up and squeeze, okay? So it's not so much how high you bring it up, as long as you're not rocking to the other side, okay? So the full rep would look like this: donkey kick, fire hydrant, okay? To make it harder, you could use a band. That gets a little bit tricky to put it around your legs this time. So in this case, you would want to use a longer band. So let me see what I have here. Okay, so a less strong tension, and what you would do is you would hook it across like an X, okay? And a couple ways that you could do it. If you don't have anything to hook it against, you would just hold it, okay, with your hands, and do the same thing, okay? And then come up. You could also hook the weight in between, okay? This gets a little bit tricky as well, okay? But again, don't do the step up or the moderate until you have your form down. All right. This is one of those exercises where you may need to play with it a little bit to figure out how you're going to feel it. And then it may also be one of those where it's like 7-8 reps, nothing, and then you really start to feel it, okay? Also, with the foam rolling, the tighter side will be your stronger side, okay? That will make sense because your weaker side has made your tighter side, your other side do all the work, and therefore that other side will be more tight. All right, give it a go.